Hey everybody, we're back to do a charge port replacement on this iPhone 5S. It's actually a combination of the headphone jack, the charging port, and we'll actually remove the speaker as well, although it's not part of the cable replacement. We'll be using this suction cup to help get us off, since I'm using this anodized iPhone here. We'll use this pentalobe screwdriver, a couple of pry tools, a guitar pick style. We'll also need a Phillips screwdriver and a nylon spudger to help pry up the cables on the interior of the phone. And we'll need our replacement cable. You can see it right here that it's the mic, the charge port, and the 3.5mm headphone jack. We're going to go ahead and start unscrewing the pentalobe screws on the bottom of the phone. Now I just did a housing change on this phone, which is why it is green. But the housing, the charge port area of it is actually white, and I haven't done a video on changing this, so I wanted to match the rest of the phone, and we'll make it black, which is the replacement color that I have. We're just going to use our suction cup. We're going to be very careful when we pry the LCD off. We don't want to damage the home button ribbon cable, which connects right underneath. So we're just going to use this guitar pick once we've got it slightly opened to help pry the case open. We're just going to put it in and twist it left and right, and that'll go ahead and get the clips on the sides of the phone to go ahead and detach for us. Perfect, just like so. We're going to go ahead and use our hands to go ahead and pull it up. We're then going to slide the LCD down and up just a little bit. That'll give us the option to slide the device to one side and actually give us the option for the home button ribbon cable here. We're going to pry off this little cover, and that actually unclipped the cable for us as well. So we're going to go ahead and open this. We do not want to open this past right basically level with the phone itself. We don't want to damage the cables. The next thing we're going to go ahead and do is take off the battery terminal. So we're going to undo the housing portion that covers the battery cable to the logic board. 2 screws will take that out for us. We'll go ahead and take the little metal shield off, and we can go ahead and pry up the connector. You can see just right underneath there. Go ahead and use our nylon spudger to do so. Pop that right up, and that'll go ahead and make sure that the battery's turned off. We don't damage or fry any circuits. Now you can actually remove this bottom portion without actually taking the LCD off. It's kind of a pain in the butt. What you can do is just use a tool to open it. It's pretty easy to take the LCD off, so we're going to do that in this situation. We're going to take out the 4 screws holding down the EMI cover just right here at the top right hand corner of the phone. And that'll give us access to the ribbon cables of the phone itself. Alright, go ahead and just remove that shield and set that aside. We're going to go ahead and take, I've got a screw stuck in there, so I can't get it out. We'll go ahead and take our nylon spudger here and pop the ribbon cables off. So we're going to use the side one over here first, then the second one, and then there's one further back just underneath both those 2 cables. That'll be the 3 of them. It'll make it changing it just a little bit easier. I got a screw still stuck in there and I can't get it out for some reason. Let's use my spudger to pry it out here real fast. There we go. You can go ahead and set that screw aside. Alright, so the cable we're working with actually attaches right here. So we're going to go ahead and detach this cable from the logic board. And go ahead and just pry it up a little bit. Now we need to take all of these screws out that are down here. I believe there are 7 of them. This one that I'm taking out right here connects to the speaker. We'll go ahead and take that out. You do need to make sure that you take them out and keep them in the order in which you took them out and put them in the exact same way. They must come out exactly the same way. Or I mean put back in exactly the same way. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove all these screws here. A lot of them just don't want to come out. My screwdriver is not very magnetized anymore. Have to get a magnetizer for it. Use just a pair of pliers or some tweezers to pull out the screws here. got a little metal clip that it sticks on every once in a while. A few more screws to remove. This is our third one. We have 4 more to go. Now the next screw that I'm taking out on this charge port and the one after it are actually holding down a little metal housing for the home button ribbon cable, which we just detached. So you might see it move around a little bit, and that's fine. Might have to switch my little pliers here for some tweezers. Get a little bit better angle on it here. There we go. And then our last screw here. Go ahead and set that aside. So we got our speaker here. We're going to pry up from the kind of towards the bottom area, and that'll go ahead and pull out for us. You can see that there's a clip right here. I'm going to go ahead and just move that forward. The housing clip. And then there's an actual metal portion that's attached to the ribbon cable. We're just going to pry that forward just a little bit. Pry our speaker up and out. You can see this little hinge portion here, and the top portion actually fit slightly underneath the logic board, so you want to pry from the bottom of it and then pull it out. You can go ahead and start pulling on our ribbon cable. You may have to use a spudger underneath it to go ahead and pry it up. There's some adhesive that's is underneath this that sticks it down. Some of them are harder than others. There's also a little ribbon cable or a wire cable here we need to detach. So we're going to go ahead and pull that off and just kind of let it snaggle aside. Now once we've done that, we can wiggle it, and free comes our cable. We're going to go ahead and set that aside. You can see there's a little washer here. We want to line this up with the 2 screw holes that are right underneath it. And there's one additional washer right here for this hole. If you see it pop off, mine's still attached. You want to make sure you put that back in place. So there's a couple things we need from this. We need this metal housing here for the home button cable connector. We also need a little grounding clip that's on the 3.5mm jack. You can go ahead and just pull that off. We'll need that for the new cable. And we're going to take a look and see if there's anything else that we need. So I have my new and our old. So you can see the new one's black and the old one's white. There's this little plastic grommet that goes on top of the microphone. We will need that. So go ahead and pull that off. Remember the way that it came off? Alright, other than that, it looks like we are set. You can see that I have some coverings over the new taped portions. We're going to go ahead and put these things back on. So this grounding clip goes underneath the screw hole, then it wraps around to the other screw hole on the 3.5mm headphone jack. If you have to apply a little bit more adhesive, you can go ahead and do so. You can just try to make it work without it, which is the preferred method. Just use my spudger to try to work the adhesive that's on there still. See that it's stuck on. I'm just going to bend back the home button ribbon cable just a little tiny bit. See, we have our little plastic grommet here for the microphone. Now, normally the new cable will come with this little blue covering on it. This basically is just covering some adhesive. We're going to take our little grommet here, and you want to put the portion, the larger portion that will actually stick back onto the port of the phone, facing down. The gold portion, or the metal portion of the microphone, will be facing the rounded top portion. The goal is we're going to bend this cable back a little bit, and we'll go ahead and stick it onto the port. We go ahead and remove the other little coverings for the adhesive here. I want to make sure all the adhesive is exposed. Alright, now that that's done, we can go ahead and put our microphone onto the little plastic grommet that's on the actual mid-frame. You want to make sure you stick it onto the place. There's a little spot where you can see it'll have a round portion and 2 flat side portions. You want to make sure you push the grommet onto that, and it will stick on. If not, your people will not be able to hear you very well. I'm going to use my spudger to kind of push the cable down while I push the grommet onto its spot. Perfect. We have done that. Now we're going to go ahead and just push the 3.5mm headphone jack. First the entry point down towards the frame, and then we'll push the back end to the bottom here. My battery is a little bit larger on this device. The top portion is. So we're going to need to probably use my spudger to kind of push it in here in a second. See, it's not wanting to sit flat and flush. We're just going to use a spudger, pry it out just a little bit on the top of the battery, and then I can push my headphone jack into place. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put a screw in. That'll hold everything in that I just did all that work for. We'll put the screw in. The last one we took out just in the corner here to hold the 3.5mm headphone jack in its spot. Make sure that it's able to see through, everything looks good, everything's lined up correctly. Next thing we're going to go ahead and do is push the cable down onto the logic board. It's got a little bit of a crease area in it. You can see right here. It's going to fold down. We can go ahead and push the clip in. I actually find it easier to attach the cable and then put the adhesive portion down of the cable onto the logic board. If you put the adhesive side down first, sometimes it can be a little too short and it doesn't want to fit correctly for you. So we're just going to put the clip on, and then we'll push down the adhesive on the cable here. Alright, the next step is to go ahead and put the speaker back in. You can see we have it right here. There's two things you want to be careful for. You need to put the little clip at the top of the speaker back underneath the logic board. We're going to push down in on the bottom portion here. And there's a place where it fits in. It's like a little rubber grommet down at the bottom. You want to make sure that you give it enough leverage that this grommet fits snugly around it and not in front of it. If not, your speaker will be distorted just a little bit. I'm going to take a screw. I'm going to go ahead and put it into the speaker slot to hold it in place now as well. Alright, now comes what I consider to be the hardest part of the entire thing, which is connecting this little tiny wire connector back onto its slot just below the battery. It is a pain in the butt. Sometimes I do it for the first time, and sometimes it takes me a few seconds to go ahead and get this done. You want to be careful that you don't damage this connector. So you want to line it up just perfect and then give it a little bit of press with the fingernail or a spudger. See if you can't get it to clip on. It's kind of like a button on button fly jeans. It'll just snap into place. Really having a difficult time here. Now there is a little wire guide that's on top of the speaker. It's not necessary that you put that in before you clip this down, but it can be helpful to give it to the right spot. The difference is that the old cable is bent in the correct direction, and this is a fresh wire cable, so it's not bent correctly. Something that can help is if you bend it a little bit, try to follow your old cable portion before you put it back in, and just kind of try to bend it in the same manner. That way when you input everything, it'll be exactly the same and fit right back on perfect for you. You have to bear with me for just a few seconds while I put this in. Now the benefit of watching me do this instead of me just skipping past and saying, oh look, I clipped it on, that was super easy, is that you can see that it's really actually a fairly difficult thing to do. You have to have a little bit of patience. So if you're looking to change this, this is something to be aware of. It can be done. I mean, it's not extremely difficult. It can just be a little bit frustrating. So just don't let your frustration let you push a little too much force on it and break it, and then you're out an entire phone rather than just a charge port. Try these tweezers here and see if that'll help. Alright, I didn't break anything. That's a plus. Next step is to go ahead and put the remaining screws back into the device. So we're going to go ahead and start with this top charge port screw here. It's a little bit longer than all the rest. We'll go ahead and put that one in. We have a shorter screw to go into the bottom portion, just right below that one. It's going to push this little cable portion of the speaker. Try to get the holes to line up before I try to put this little tiny screw in there. Normally if you just push it and hold it for a second, it'll stay in place for a few seconds. Give you time enough to put your screw back in. Go ahead and put the next small screw in to the bottom port of the charge port. Now the next step is we have this little piece of the housing here we need to go ahead and put back into place. So the black portion of it goes to the bottom left hand side, line up both screw ports. You need to take the home button cable and fold it over. We're going to go ahead and just put some screws in here first, and we can worry about that in just a second. Go ahead and put our second screw in here. Go back and tighten up the first one just a little bit. Alright, now you don't have to do this, but I like to adhese the little back side of the home button cable back to the metal frame. I use just a tiny bit of this brushable super glue to get it to fit. Sometimes they don't want to stay, sometimes they do. There's usually a little foam double-sided piece of tape here that works. If you don't have any super glue, you can just use some double-sided tape as well. But sometimes super glue doesn't work very good for bonding metal on metal, which is what's happening here since the foam is gone. Yeah, I didn't want to stick, so we're going to try just a little tiny bit more. I'm just brushing this on the back side of the cable, just where the connector is at, and no more. And I'm not using very much. You don't want to get super glue inside your phone if it were to drip or anything. Well, no luck there. Still doesn't want to stick for us. So it looks like I'm going to have to use some double-sided tape. You can see I have some just right here. Just cut a little tiny piece off. We're just going to put it on the back side of the cable here. Just right where I put the super glue at. Just going to go ahead and use this razor blade to go and peel this back. Or maybe a dental pick here, something a little bit stickier. Go ahead and use our spudger to go ahead and put this back into place. You want the charge port to be kind of in between the two prongs where the clip will sit. Alright, we've successfully changed out that entire cable system down below. We're going to go ahead and just reattach our digitizer and LCD. Just be careful as you press these last couple components back onto the logic board. Something's going to be a little bit tricky. Just use a firm pressure, but don't be forceful with them. Put down our second cable. This next cable is our last. Perfect. Let's make sure all three of them are nice and snug. Put our shield back on. Now you want to be careful not to bend these cables too much that are attached to the LCD. So be nice and gentle as you do this. Just going to prop this open for a second. Let's go ahead and push our cable down a little bit and then insert the screw in. Go ahead and do our next screw. Two more to go. Now it may seem like it's a bad idea to prop this open, but it's so much easier than having to open and close and open and close it. Even though it comes out every time I put a screw in, it does save a little bit of hassle, as well as wear and tear on the cables that are attaching to the logic board as well. Alright, well now we're reattached our battery cable. The next step is to go ahead and put the shield back on top. And then put in our final two screws into the logic board here. Alright, here's our last screw into the battery shield. I'm going to pull off this little sticker here. It's kind of protruding. I didn't want to come out underneath the LCD screen when we go ahead and put it back down. Alright, we're going to go ahead and set down the LCD and pull out the ribbon cable just a little bit. Find it here. Alright, now that we have it, we can go ahead and just kind of push it back onto the connector here. You can use a spudger or your finger to kind of get it in place. Alright, the next step is to take the clip that we removed to go ahead and put it back on. You'll see that one side has two notches on it and the other side kind of has an extending out piece or an extruding piece. You want to make sure that you put the two notches towards the battery side and the notch that's kind of sticking out down towards the charge port. Oh. Just go ahead and press it in place. Oh, my cable came up, fortunately. Let's go ahead and push this back down. That tape is just not functioning for me. Once we get the clip in, that'll hold it in place for us, so I'm not too concerned about it. Alright, there we go. Now we have that in place. We'll go ahead and take and put the top portion of the LCD in first, just making sure that everything fits back into place. We'll go ahead and sandwich it down from the top to the bottom. Alright, there's only one way to test it, and that is to go ahead and put in the charging cable and see if it turns on. Well, I was slightly concerned for a second, but then I realized that I forgot to plug in the other side of it, so let's go ahead and plug that in. There we go. So definitely getting some action through the charge port here. Let the device go ahead and power back on. Alright, so one thing you want to do next is go ahead and put the pentalobe screws back into the bottom of your device. I left that out of this video, but not a big deal. So go ahead and just toss those 2 screws back in the bottom there. We're just going to double check and make sure that the screen's working, which it definitely does. Hey, if you guys like this video, found it helpful, go ahead and hit the like button. Go ahead and subscribe to me if you find these videos useful. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks.